Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
If John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John.
Yeah. Roberta in the truth zone, mic hitting raw. Spotlight shining, she exposing the flaw. Debunking the myth, breaking their facade. This is Glass City, respect the squad. On these NYC blocks where the skyline flex big. Roberta Glass slicing lies with a truth rig. Innocence frosters, your stories unravel. She's a map through the madness of gritty gravel. Glass don't bend and facts don't break. She's a storm that's called, you feel the quake. Exposing tales stitched with crooked seams. Justice in the lens, shattered fake dreams. Screams about killers, painted heroes in disguise. She burning propaganda with fire in her eyes. No glamour for the guilty, she call it straight. She backs victims, the voice stay awake. Stats and receipts, no spin, no clutter. Cold cases whisper, she cuts through the mutter. Truth's her tempo, don't confuse the beat. She's standing for the real while you taking a seat. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to play. She's glass hard, break the false and save the day. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time.
Okay, I'm back. Wow, what shocking news. Bryan Kohberger, of course, now can be called I always thought he was the real murderer. Now he says, I did it. He accepted a plea deal to avoid the death penalty for the murders of Madison Mogen, who's 21, Kelly Gonzalez, who's 21 also, Zaina Kernoodle was 20, Ethan Chapin, also 20, when he broke into their home and killed them on November 13th, 2022. This is extremely good news. And I know that the family may be upset that he's not receiving the death penalty, but I'll show you some of the coverage on this. We'll watch some of the coverage together. But why I think is extremely good is that there was a mounting innocence fraud campaign for Bryan Kohberger that could have really gained a lot of strength. All the usual suspects that we saw in the Karen Read case would have taken the other side. Same kind of talking points. This is why I got on here. Let me just see who came on. Hey, Tater Bug. Hey, your latex spouse, Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah, I really thought it was just important that we just watch this together. Such a crazy turn of events. But all the regular characters that we saw saying, oh, it's really shoddy evidence. Same thing they say in every innocence fraud campaign. Tunnel vision investigation, sloppy investigation. The evidence was corrupted, not reliable, not convincing. Real killers still out there. Same thing that we've heard in Karen Read, we would have heard in Bryan Kohberger. 1 million YouTubers would have gone on and shilled for Bryan Kohberger. Now he's saying, I did it. What we all knew was true. I did it. No one else responsible. So let me get into some of the coverage on this. Amazing turn of events. So here we are, News Nation.
Proposed dropping the death.
Whoop. So this is News Nation.
All right, breaking news coming in from the state of Idaho once again, but on a different story, as News Nation has just learned that the accused killer, Bryan Kohberger, accepted a plea deal. Yeah, a plea deal was offered.
he's now the actual killer. We don't have to call him accused. He's the actual murderer. He did it. He said, I did it. I'm guilty. So clear that this character, murderer, psychopath, they had just ruled that they couldn't use the word psychopath or sociopath in his trial. Now, it could have been used by experts, but they never would have used that since it's not, they would have used antisocial personality, but so clearly a psychopath. He was trying to find out what was wrong with him. He was studying murderers and criminology at the time of that he murdered 4 young people.
And he has accepted the deal. Sources are confirming that prosecutors proposed dropping the death penalty. That was the deal in exchange for Kohberger pleading guilty to committing 4 murders and pleading guilty to burglary as well. So,
isn't it interesting that these murderers who murder so freely are actually scared of the death penalty? The punishment that they dole out so liberally to others who've done nothing wrong to innocents. They're afraid of getting themselves. Isn't that odd?
So guilty plea in exchange for no death penalty. Now, the background on this story, you'll remember he's accused of killing those 4 University of Idaho students at their home. It was back in November of 2020.
He's no longer accused. He signed the ink. What are they afraid Bryan Kohberger is going to sue them from prison? He did it. He said he did it. Yo, message to News Nation, he did it. He says he did it. He signed the deal. He did it because he's scared of the death penalty. I mean, he might have gotten acquitted of some of these charges. Might have. It looked like a pretty strong case, but so did Karen Reed's. Where's Turtle Boy? He didn't have a Turtle Boy.
2022. Sources say Kohberger must also agree to spend the rest of his life in prison without any possibility of parole. So jail for life, no parole, but again, no death penalty. Must wait.
I hope they really stick with that because they've done that before. They give them life sentences without the possibility of parole. And then they get out somehow. I hope he doesn't fight this and try to overturn it. And I hope the people that were trying to shill off of his murder don't start trying to get him out of prison. That's what I'm worried about. It happens. Look at Purvis Payne, the guiltiest guy ever, killed Charisse Christopher, her infant daughter, Lacey Christopher, and tried to kill her son, Nicholas Christopher, survived the attack, ran out of the house, was seen by the neighbors as watched closing the door. He testified at the time, made damning admissions in his testimony that he did it. He ran out and ran into a police officer fleeing from the scene, was found hiding in an attic. When they started an innocence fraud campaign for Purvis Payne, wait till you find out how this turned out. They tested the DNA on the murder weapon. His fingerprints were all over the scene of the crime. Nevertheless, they went ahead with DNA testing, and his DNA was found on the handle of the knife. What was the headlines? What did the press go with? Some incomplete DNA found on the knife was the real killer. But meanwhile, in paragraph 4, you'd find out that his DNA was found. Did the Innocence Project at all back down after that? No, they doubled down on innocence and continued until they finally got his death sentence commuted to life with parole. He's going to be paroled. This baby child murderer. Maybe in a few years, he's coming up for parole. I know it's in a couple of years. Because he was his IQ, apparently his IQ was high enough to testify in his own defense, but he is too low to kill. So they have them malinger on these IQ tests.
Waive his right to appeal as part of this as well. Plea deal has been accepted. A court hearing for a change of plea will take place on Wednesday, so in 2 days. So this is just breaking. They'll be covering it in more detail tonight on Elizabeth Vargas Reports and also on Banfield. One of many big stories we're covering. Now,
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our news.
So do you guys remember when Bryan Kohberger was caught? So I believe that I was looking at this yesterday. They stopped his car when he was fleeing the scene with his father. Do you guys remember that? There's two really interesting traffic stops with him. One where he makes a left in the middle of, and he says, in Pennsylvania, we're allowed to do this, but it's so clear that they were profiling him, pulling him over because his car was seen that night. Also, the woman who delivered food to the house, I don't know, or another house, saw him in the Uber driver or a thing like Uber, saw him. Here's the body cam of his traffic stop. Yeah, I was looking at this the other day. So strange.
Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing today? Good, good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where are you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're standing early.
What's WSU?
Yeah, I go to university basically. That is SWAT team area.
So we're okay. I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going where? Oh,
He's like, Dad, don't say too much. Look at his worried expression.
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
oh, okay.
And his psychopathic beady eyes dart back to the police officer. Imagine how terrifying it was. He came in masked. He left the sheath of his knife. These 4 college students came in, profiled them. He's also apparently looking on his phone for pornography of women asleep. Non-consensual relations. Madison, basically, you know what that is. Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Zaina Kernoodle, and Ethan Chapin. Can you imagine these beady eyes staring out at you from a mask? Oh, what a psycho. So if you're just tuning in, Bryan Kohberger just pled guilty to the murder on November 13th, 2022 of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Zaina Kernoodle, and Ethan Chapin. He pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. We're looking at his traffic stop. They're pulling him over, trying to ID him from his car and his plates.
Yeah, we're slightly punchy because we're driving for hours.
Hours, days.
Hours to drive. Well, almost a day.
Okay. And what did you say about some SWAT team thing? Or
Yeah, there was a mass shooting and everything.
Where?
Apparently, he checked on his phone he was searching on his phone after the murders for Idaho for murders. He was also looking for the same kind of knife and knife sheath that was found in the knife sheath was found at the crime scene. He was looking on Amazon to buy similar. His defense was saying that these could have been suggested advertisements by Amazon randomly. They're suggesting to him to buy the same kind of knife.
Interesting.
Well, it's horrifying because he's supposed to be university, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So y'all work at the university there?
I actually do work there.
Oh.
PhD in criminal.
Okay. Okay.
So are they talking about the crime and they're calling it a shooting, or are they referring to something else? Let me know in the comments.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that incident. Just yesterday, or?
No, this happened about an hour and a half ago. We're still wrapping it up for investigating. I'm not sure there's two shootings because they did shoot somebody.
Let's see.
And then we don't know about that actually. They were there for the shooting.
Yes, you do. I believe so. That is always a deal of plea deal. I mean, just think about it. You would have to legally admit to what you did. You have to know what you're pleading guilty to, and you have to say what you did. Absolutely, he's going to have to do it. Roberta, does Bryan Kohberger, your latex spouse, is asking Roberta, does Bryan Kohberger need to openly admit in court exactly what he did, like the BTK killer? Yes, he does. Good point. Thank you. Who did I miss? Wesley loves October. I've been going through withdrawal since I don't get to see y'all. Why? Everett say. Okay. Glad you're here, Wesley. We're just hanging out, watching the Bryan Kohberger coverage. I was just going over. So I was watching this the other day. This traffic stop. Does anyone know? Let me go back. Are they talking when they say in this it was a terrible shooting? Are they talking about they thought maybe it was a shooting at his school? He says he teaches there criminal law. It sounds like they're talking about this crime, but are they talking about something else to the police officer? Does anyone know? Okay.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay?
Oh.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Okay, we'll get back to his other, but here's some more coverage of him pleading guilty. We'll get back to his other traffic stop in a second, which is vastly more interesting. I don't know, just as interesting as that one to me.
Accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students has accepted a plea deal. Newswatch 16 Stacey Lang is with us to explain. Stacey, what can you tell us at this hour?
Yeah, Scott, this news breaking just minutes before the beginning of this newscast. So this is the information we have so far. Bryan Kohberger, the Monroe County native, who's accused of stabbing and killing 4 University of Idaho students to death in their off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho, back in 2022. You probably have heard much about this case so far. We've been talking about it here on Newswatch 16. It has been covered extensively in the national news. Bryan Kohberger has accepted a plea deal. ABC News has confirmed that information through a letter that was sent to the families of all 4 of those victims. That letter says that Bryan Kohberger will plead guilty to all of the charges against him. That includes 4 counts of first-degree murder for which he was facing potentially the death penalty. This guilty plea, he will accept 4 consecutive life sentences. He will agree to serve the rest of his life in prison, taking the death penalty off the table. Now, what we know now is that Kohberger is expected in court in 2 days on July 2nd to go over the terms of this plea deal. We'll learn a lot more then.
Okay, so that'll be, I'll try to cover that if you guys are interested. I don't know how many people have followed this in my audience. I certainly have. One of the more shocking crimes. He was also, I believe he was looking up Ted Bundy. Am I misremembering that? So he basically wanted to be a notorious killer. And he was posting things up on Reddit asking how, oh no, the photo sprang Ted Bundy comparisons. Oh no, he was searching for Ted Bundy. Okay, so he's been compared to Ted Bundy and he was searching for Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy could slightly pass more than Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger, as it just screams to me, psychopathic killer. And he doesn't know how to relate to people.
There was news in this case coming out just today. Our own Emily Kress was in Monroe County Court as 7 different people are being called from Monroe County going to serve or testify rather in this trial in Idaho that was set to begin in about 6 weeks. We were there for those hearings today. This plea deal that we're just learning about now would now make those subpoenas null and void, and also avoids for Kohberger the death penalty, and for those victims' families the potential.
Yeah, he's saving them the horror. I mean, it's really hard. It's really, if you just caught my last live, I'm just jumping on here to talk about Bryan Kohberger pleading guilty. And the families are upset that the death penalty is on the table. They really should be so happy that they're sparing them a trial. I mean, this is really what you hope. I think this is what they thought Karen Reed would do. They underestimated her. It's such a great, happy turn of events. He'll get life in prison without the possibility of parole. Who knows if there's some politicians out there who want to limit the amount of years you can do for any crime to 20 years. So make our system much more like a European system. So who knows in 10, 20 years if people will be trying to get him out. I hope not. He will be, he knows he's dangerous. Bryan Kohberger's phone shows searches for Ted Bundy, porn, and Madison Mogen was the intended target. So Bryan Kohberger's phone data reportedly showed searches for sociopathic traits in college students. Can psychopaths behave pro-socially? So he knew he was a psychopath. And he was searching for pornography, including the words sleeping and drugged. Really reminds you how dark Bill Cosby's crimes were. Kohberger allegedly, not that we need reminding, Kohberger allegedly sent out a Reddit survey when he was a student that asked criminals about their methods. So I think he was trying to commit the perfect crime. Steve Gonzalez told Banfield that his family received a letter from someone who claimed that they were interviewed by Kohberger. Steve Gonzalez told Banfield he got the sense that Bryan was getting off on his story, and his story was basically he'd listen to a police scanner, wait for somebody to call the police on a domestic violence type thing, and then the male would be arrested, and then the house would be his to rob. Bryan seemed to enjoy that story. Bryan Kohberger's phone allegedly had dozens of pictures of female students from Washington State and University of Idaho. Many of the students in the photo were reportedly in bathing suits. After a review, Dateline found that many of the women in those photos were close friends with 3 of the students that were killed. Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Dana Kernoodle. Previously, it was unknown if there were any connections between Kohberger and the murdered students. Gonzalez's father said about these photos, "I don't know if Kaylee was in them, but I find it very telling that there were other students and they were supposed to be in their friend circles and that they were on the phone." Kohberger visited Moscow dozens of times. He had been invited to a pool party in Moscow, Idaho on July 9th. 3 witnesses allegedly met him there. His phone data reportedly, and isn't it interesting that he's pleading guilty in July? His phone data reportedly showed that he visited Moscow again after dark on the same day. An FBI expert claimed that his phone showed at least 12 trips to Moscow, Idaho over the next month. His phone also reportedly connected with cell towers that was close to the home where the roommates were found killed. Okay. See what else.
Potential of going through a trial that was set to continue through at least November. So we're just learning the details of this plea deal now, Scott. So we'll have much more to talk about tonight on Newswatch 16 and tomorrow as well.
We have breaking news.
Okay, so that'll give you a. Let's see if anybody really knows anything at all. But before this, the word out was that it's an iffy case. I mean, people were trying to frame this as an iffy case, that perhaps the real killer was still out there, that Bryan Kohberger was being railroaded. Now, if you're just tuning in, we're learning news that Bryan Kohberger has pled guilty. Apparently, defense witnesses didn't want to testify. Court TV was just reporting that today. Let's take a look at that. Does this have something to do with his defense falling apart, that he pled guilty? So July 2nd, he has a court date, and we will think that it's thought that he will plead guilty.
Turning now to.
So when is July 2nd? Is that, let's see, what is it today? So that's Wednesday. Okay.
Developing news out of the state of Pennsylvania, where the judge in the college murders case is expected to make a major ruling about testimony from some key witnesses in this case. This comes as 2 friends who found.
I mean, he had a lot of defense-friendly rulings before this. One is that they couldn't mention the words sociopath or psychopath in his trial. Does that mean that those searches for can a psychopath or sociopath act pro-socially? Would that mean that evidence was thrown out? I don't know.
The victims' bodies are speaking out for the very first time. Here they are on GMA earlier today.
In the documentary, you tell the story of really not feeling alarmed when Dylan called you.
I joked around with her on the phone. You know, it's something you would never expect.
It's November, so I had shorts on, slides on. Like, I wasn't prepared to obviously stay there. I was just going over to check, see what's going on. I would say as soon as you get there, you know something's wrong.
This morning, potential witnesses appeared at a hearing to determine if there is cause for them to be compelled to travel to testify at Bryan Kohberger's upcoming trial ahead in August in Boise, Idaho. Kohberger is accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students back in November of 2022. Just last week, the judge denied the defense from bringing up an alternate suspect's defense at their trial. He also denied a delay in the trial. Joining us now with the very latest.
Well, we know that doesn't stop lawyers from from hinting at it in a trial, opening on it, and then basically framing their whole closing around the idea that someone else did it. Is this going to be Alan Jackson's next case, or is he busy? I mean, what else? I mean, he had public defenders. I mean, they made him do the right thing here. I mean, just think about these. Nobody wants to be a witness in a murder case. No one does. No one in their right mind.
Latest is Court TV's Senior Director of Courtroom Coverage, Grace Wong. Grace, you were in that courtroom today. Nice to see you. What stood out?
Good morning, Matt. And as you know, Pennsylvania does not allow cameras in the courtroom. Today, there were 6 witnesses that had been subpoenaed by the defense who were ordered to appear to to testify about whether they would agree to being witnesses at Kohberger's trial. And if they don't agree, whether they could overcome the subpoena. And the judge was there to determine whether he would order them to appear at the trial. Now, 3 witnesses, Ralph Vecchio, Brandon Andriola, and there was one other witness who testified, that Jesse Harris, who was the former boxing coach. All 3 of them objected to being called to this trial. They felt like their testimony, as they had complied with information. They had given as much information as they could to both sides, and they didn't feel that appearing before the trial and testifying in person would add that much more than what they had already given. And they were also expressing concern, particularly Brandon Andriola and Jesse Harris, expressed concern about being associated with the trial, associated with Kohberger. In Brandon Andriola's case, he feared for his job. He is the sole income earner for his family, and they have a small child, and he is in customer service. And he said that just being associated with this case has brought on a lot of media attention that he said is unwanted. And as we get closer to the trial and him appearing in person,
Wait, is he being tried? I thought he was being tried in Idaho, where the crime took place. Is he being tried in Pennsylvania? She said, cameras don't. Is this really old? Is this? Wait, hold on. Let me look at this. Hold on.
trial would only prompt more and increase his risk of losing.
This was 6 hours ago. They put this up. Can somebody explain to me, why did she say, is he being tried in Pennsylvania or Idaho? I know he's from Pennsylvania. I'm so confused. I thought he was being tried in Idaho, where the crime took place. The witness, thank you, Air Dry. Okay, thank you.
Losing his job, or what he fears of losing his job. And he mentioned that the 2 sisters that Kohberger has have lost their jobs. And he cited that concern as the reason why he feared for his job. And as for Jesse Harris, he said that he expressed his heart goes out to both families. And he didn't want to feel like he was in a position to advocate for one side or the other, and that he had already given whatever testimony he could to both sides. And in Jesse Harris's case, he knew Kohberger when he was still a teen, 15 and 16 years old, and he doesn't really know Kohberger as the adult male that he is now. So he felt that he didn't feel like he needed to go to Idaho to testify. But in any case, the judge has ordered all 3 of these.
So this is all a moot point right now. Some interesting facts about Bryan Kohberger. He was pled guilty and officially or agreed to plead guilty. He's saying, I did it. I killed Ethan Chapin, Zana Kernoodle, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen on the night or the day of early morning hours of November 13th, 2002. He burst into their home in a mask, stabbed them all to death, 4 a.m. He was he He was a doctoral student at Washington State University, where he also worked as a teaching assistant, grading papers. Students said that he could be overly demanding. And then before the murder, he became, according to the interview I saw of one of his students, became incredibly lax and gave everyone, basically the equivalent of an A. So he went from being very demanding and very critical and a hard grader to an incredibly easy grader, almost like he found something else like murder to take his interest. I guess that could be inferred from that. Investigators said that he left a tan leather sheath for a large K-bar knife. It was found on the bed next to where Madison Mogen's body was found. Kernoodle had been up ordering food. Zaina Kernoodle had been up ordering food, and she was the next one to be attacked. And he also attacked Zaina Kernoodle's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, and killed him. It's thought to be when he was asleep. They found carvings in Chapin's lower leg with this same blade. Investigators found DNA on that knife sheath, as I said before, and by using genetic genealogy, they were able to make a statistical match to Bryan Kohberger to the DNA found on the knife sheath. And when police arrested Bryan Kohberger at his home, he asked the policeman about his education and suggested that they go have coffee. So if that policeman wants to have coffee, he's going to have to go to prison because he has agreed to take a plea deal, if you're just tuning in, to life, agreeing to plead guilty to the murder of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Zaina Kernoodle, for agreement to take the death penalty off the table. He's agreeing to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Believe there's another charge connected to it, which is home invasion. So he's sparing the family a grueling trial. We're watching defense witnesses did not want to testify for him. Maybe this had something to do with him taking the plea deal. Take a listen.
Well, at least in both these cases, to appear as witnesses in the case, because the lawyer representing the defense said that this was a death penalty case and it was important that they appear, and they were material witnesses. So the judge agreed, and both have been ordered to appear. In the third case, in Ralph Vecchio's case, he is the owner of the car dealership that sold the car to the Kohberger family. This is the car in question that law enforcement says Kohberger was driving when he was at the crime scene. This is the white Hyundai Elantra.
So basically a witness saying it was his. I think they would have made an easy match to him. Thank you, Wesley Loves Octoberfest, for gifting 10 memberships to the channel. They'll be handed out in random. Robert, thanks for gifting a membership as well. So 11 altogether memberships. Thanks, guys. They're upset. The Gonzalez family is upset. They shouldn't be upset. I know they wanted the death penalty, but it's getting harder and harder to get the death penalty in cases. And like I've said earlier, they don't know innocence fraud. There was the brewing among YouTubers a big innocence fraud campaign for Bryan Kohberger. It was just gearing up, maybe too little, too late. But we would have seen all through his trial what we saw in Richard Allen's trial, and maybe even more, that this was an iffy case. He was railroaded, sloppy. what they say in every innocence fraud campaign: sloppy police investigation, tunnel vision police investigation, evidence isn't reliable, real killer still out there. They should be very happy. This is, I think, my feeling, and is they're lucky that they were spared a trial. And it's much harder to get out when you plead guilty to overturn the conviction. There's no loophole, so you can't say that the jury was so biased or prejudice or anything. I certainly can't get out on low IQ. I don't know what else they could. Loopholes. I mean, this would have been fodder for true crime. Still may. There still may be people who will try to get him off and say that he didn't know what he was doing when he took the plea deal. But it's much harder than if he got convicted, especially if it were a death penalty conviction. They would have had the weight of the power of the death penalty movement and the wrongful conviction movement trying to overturn this case. So it's really a very, very, very happy, my opinion. I respect the opinion of the family, but I don't think that they've been paying attention to this multi-billion-dollar innocence fraud movement, wrongful conviction movement, whatever you want to call it, in our country that just gains more and more power every year. And the power of what has become of true crime media. I am the only channel that I know of on YouTube that does not partake in any innocence fraud at all. It seems to be, for you to be a popular channel, you have to pick one or two cases that you're going to go to bat for the killer for, say that they're wrongful convictions and dispute them somehow in a way that titillates the audience. It's a sad state of affairs out there. I think they should be so pleased by this, but I respect their feelings. So we have that traffic stop. Does anybody remember? Let's see. Let me see if I can find it where it's this other traffic stop. Hold on. This is the one.
Bryan Kohberger was a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University.
Investigators made multiple inquiries about Kohberger and gathered some additional background information.
He was also a TA known for being an incredibly punitive grader. Everyone kind of hated him.
As I said before the murder, the month leading up to the murder, he got to be a incredibly liberal grader. Like, he just didn't care anymore. They also complained about him.
Women in his classes, he had it.
That's complaints from women is a theme in his life. When he was in a program, I believe it was in high school, to become a police officer, he was thrown out of that program, and he was a much bigger guy, heavy guy at that time. It looks like, just from the pictures of him doing push-ups. He got thrown out of that program to be a police officer due to complaints from women students.
The tendency to, I think someone described it as like mansplaining.
Police also learned that he'd been involved in a traffic stop. It was a month earlier, and it was captured on the body camera of a WSU campus police officer.
Hello, I am Officer Langus. Stops being audio and video recorded.
Kohberger is pulled over by a female police officer in Pullman, Washington, for essentially running a red light. And what you see is somebody who's not intimidated to interact with a police officer in a somewhat exhaustive way.
You ran the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah,
so
I was behind you the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
He,
in kind of an exhaustive way. He never stopped arguing that he felt he was in the right. And because Pennsylvania law my home state, allows you to do this, that he's like, what would you have me to do? And she's like, don't get trapped in the middle of the intersection.
He keeps repeating his position, which is that in the state he grew up in Pennsylvania, that's not a law.
In Pennsylvania, when you're stuck in the intersection, you have to make the left. So what would the appropriate thing for me to have done?
Not-
just
You're
Not
not
up
supposed
the
to
situation.
block an intersection like that in Washington. So just by you blocking the intersection, that's technically a ticketable violation.
He's not argumentative with her, but he maintains his position without ever coming around and saying, I shouldn't be getting this ticket.
But in that situation, the best thing to do then would be back up. Not.
I don't know if there's a best thing to do in that situation.
What a question. So you want me to back up and get in an accident that way? That's essentially what he's saying. You see how I was doing the safest thing? He won't back down.
He has a level of cognitive rigidity. He's got a fixed idea about the situation, about what he didn't do wrong, and he's never able to really pivot from that.
Yeah, where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have like crosswalks.
Oh.
And even when she says she's going to let him go with a warning, he continues again to try and understand the situation. And what we see is somebody who's having a hard time disengaging.
Never even occurred to me that that was actually something wrong, but well, except for the fact
He didn't know how to be socially appropriate.
I don't know if I can disagree with that. I mean, he knew how to be socially appropriate enough that he was teaching. I don't think there's a lot of information out there about, let me see if I can find anything else before I'm not going to hang out all night about this. I mean, pretty much everyone's saying the same thing, that he pled guilty. You're just tuning in. Bryan Kohberger has pled guilty. And it is a shocking development to all counts. Yeah, I don't know how much happier an ending we can get. Because this was, let's see what Law and Crime is saying. They're having people talk about it here. And Jeanette Levy. Let's just see what they're basically, he's a creepy guy. All I heard was creepy. Let's see what else they're saying for a second and a half.
Yeah, it's I in fairness, I tried to always say we need more context. Is this somebody who takes a lot of selfies? We don't know if he sent that to somebody, but yes, it's strange, a little odd, very creepy.
I think what they're referring to is the picture he took after the murders of himself. It's the thumbnail. Let me just send it to myself. And he said this is the only time he's ever called out sick. And let me know, I was looking at his hand. So he's holding up his hand and I don't know if that's a birthmark or a bruise on he's holding up his left thumb. 1 second. Let me just send it from my phone to myself and show it to you guys. I don't know if they're going to have any. Yeah. But he took this picture. Let's see what I have here. This picture. It is very creepy. Very creepy picture of him giving the thumbs up. But look down here. You see, if you go from his thumb down, is that a shadow? Is that something else? Is it a bruise? Is it something else? We don't know. Just an odd little, maybe just a shadow. And he called in odd picture to take when you call in sick. With the little headphones. I mean, he does look very pale, certainly. Odd coloring. Right back to law and crime, what they're saying.
That type of thing.
The fact that he is willing to say that he murdered them because he did is just like he is saying, I actually did this. You all were right the entire time, and I think that is horrific. And
what? We all knew he was guilty. Who looked at Bryan Kohberger and thought he couldn't have done it? Not him. That's what I'm asking. What? Not that guy. I mean, you look at him in that traffic stop with those eyes and you go, oh yeah, he could do it. And apparently we were hearing reports that after the murders, he was taking his garbage out. He wouldn't put it in the family garbage. He was sealing it in plastic bags and taking it out to throw away. He was worried about his DNA being collected from the garbage, clearly. Does anybody remember that story? I'll wait for you guys to catch up with me. His parents supportive. His father came to the arraignment where he was just dressed really inappropriately in this big floppy hat. Does anybody, let me see if I can find that. Kohberger, I just remember that his sister, he has a sister and his father. And they're going to have a lot of shame. They might, I don't know if they're going to go in denial, but it's always clearly he had some kind of a relationship with his father, that his father, I mean, my parents would never do this in a zillion years. I took myself to my first day of college. They would have never, ever driven flown to Iowa. I don't know how he got there. Flew to Idaho, to drive back with his son to Pennsylvania. My parents would be like, forget it. Let's see if I can find pictures. They have the victim's family in this. Hold on. Let's see. I just remember the pictures of his dad coming in. Let's see. Here's his arraignment.
The man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students in a home near campus in November was back in a...
No longer accused. He's saying, I did it. I'm guilty. He's pleading guilty to all of the charges. We're thinking, we're hearing that this will be done officially in a hearing on Wednesday. Try to cover that.
In a Latah County courtroom this morning. 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arraigned on 5 charges, 1 count of burglary and 4 first-degree murder charges in the deaths of Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves. When asked if he wanted to enter a plea, Kohberger chose to stay silent. Our Morgan Romero was in the court for that short hearing this morning.
Do anybody remember that, when he chose to stay silent and they had to put in a not guilty plea for him? What was he doing there? They were going with a defense, and that people were buying this, that he had some kind of autism. He was teaching, but he had some kind of autism or autistic spectrum, the same kind of Robert Durst defense. People were buying this. He had supporters in the true crime community. People would ask me, how do you feel about the Idaho 4 murderers or Bryan Kohberger? Guilty. I had no doubt. I mean, I don't know if I had enough doubt to convict him. I'd have to see what the evidence is. But to me, it didn't seem like whodunit once they found his DNA on the knife sheath. That seemed, they saw his car in the parking lot circling around that night. I never thought this guy couldn't do
Outside
it.
the Latah County Courthouse. Morgan, what does that mean that he stood silent?
So, Doug, during his short arraignment, about 15 minutes here at the Latah County Courthouse this morning, Kohberger's defense stood up and told the judge that Kohberger chose to stay silent. Effectively, the judge entered a not guilty plea on his behalf, and the case moves forward and it goes to trial. We got here around 6:20 a.m. Pacific time. We lined up outside the courthouse with other local, regional, national, even international media. Some of the victims' family members were also here. They wanted to sit in on the arraignment and see the man suspected of killing their loved ones for the first time since January.
6 months after police say he stabbed 4 University of Idaho students to death, Bryan Kohberger appeared in a Latah County courtroom, wearing an orange jumpsuit on his thin frame and shackles on his feet.
Okay, we are now on the record in State of Idaho versus Bryan C. Kohberger.
As the judge read the names of the victims, Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan.
He does that odd thing. Did you see that odd thing that he does with his mouth? Is he trying to smile?
Sandra Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. Some family members there grew emotional, wiping tears from their eyes. Kohberger's arraignment comes just 1 week after a grand jury formally indicted him on the 5 charges he already faced. Community members on the grand jury believed prosecutors showed enough evidence to move forward with the case and bring it in front of a district court judge. Judge John Judge read Kohberger his rights and explained the first-degree murder charges he faces carry a penalty of life in prison or death. The judge then asked if Kohberger was ready to plead.
Do you understand the charge in count 5, murder in the first degree? Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
And Ms. Taylor, is Mr. Kohberger prepared to plead to these charges?
Your Honor, we will be standing silent.
And because Mr. Kohberger is standing silent, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each charge.
Former Ada County Chief Deputy Prosecutor Gene Fisher told me standing silent doesn't hurt the defendant. Quote, if anything, standing silent could help the defense if they intended to file a motion of Kohberger's competency. They wouldn't want him assisting the court by answering legal questions and then turn around and file a motion saying he's not presently competent to stand trial.
But he's so autistic. I guess they were setting that up, that autistic defense back
Right.
then.
The state has 60 days now to decide whether they plan to seek the death penalty. The judge set Kohberger's trial for October 2nd, giving both sides 5 months to prepare their cases.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
It's expected to last 6 weeks. That timeline could always change between now and then. 2 other hearings happened after the arraignment, one regarding the media and Gonsalves' family's fight against the gag order in this case.
There's a lot of potential irreparable harm from media that is affecting a fair trial.
The third hearing Monday morning, setting a date for arguments over evidence. Kaylee's family shared a statement with me saying it's important we keep the victims' memories alive. They're grateful for the grand jury indictment, but are disappointed the judicial process hasn't been more efficient in changing the gag order. This weekend, Madison's dad shared with NBC how special his daughter was.
I want people to remember Maddie as just being a loving, caring, just beautiful person who everybody just misses so much, and we're just all so proud of. And this has been the most difficult thing that any of us will ever go through, and it's just important to stay close to your loved ones and your family in times like this, I would say. I mean, a lot of us are going to counseling. I've gone to counseling, and it's helped a lot, just being able to talk about things and remember her in the best way that we can and keep her memory alive.
Yeah, the victims' family and friends saying they want the victims in this case to be remembered and less of the attention being focused on the defendant. Back here in Moscow, not a lot of students here as school got out a little more than a week ago. Last Saturday, all 4 victims in these stabbings were honored with posthumous degrees during the spring commencement. By the way, it is possible that Bryan Kohberger's trial moves out of Latah County and down to Ada County, or another county in Idaho, where there's a better chance at finding a fair and impartial jury. And the Gonsalves family said it really well today, Doug. They said today is just the beginning of a long journey for all the families involved in this tragedy.
No doubt about that. And Morgan, these decisions will play out over the course of like several hearings leading up to that October date, right?
That's right. There's going to be hearings on.
Well, no more hearings except for this July. He has pled guilty. He said he did it. He's the one responsible. So that is, I think, where I'm going to leave it for tonight. I mean, is there anything else you guys want to see? Well, I just thought I'd hop on since it's such a crazy. Yeah, this is old news. Yeah, I just thought I'd show his arraignment. I was trying to find the picture of his parents. I mean, all the breaking news looks like this. I'll show you what the breaking news looks like in a second. Just looks like he's pleading guilty to everything, and they're going to iron it out. Here's what it looks like. Everyone has some version of this. No one really has any information other than, or what prompted this, other than he's pleading guilty.
Good afternoon. We have some breaking news here on ABC News Live Reports. I'm Alex Brachet in Washington. Right now, we are following news out of Idaho. Bryan Kohberger, accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students in 2022, has accepted a plea deal. ABC News has confirmed that he has agreed to plead guilty to all counts. ABC News Live anchor Kana Whitworth is on the phone with us. She has been following.
They should say their names right up front. Isn't that a shame that they just say 4 Idaho students? Hopefully they will. I mean, this is just the way that reporting's going. The murderer's name is never left out. But they're going to leave out Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Zana Kernoodle.
This case from the beginning. And Kana, what details can you share with us about how this deal came together?
Yeah, Alex, I mean, this is simply a stunning turn of events in a case that has gripped this entire nation. Up until today, we were looking at an August 18th trial date with Bryan Kohberger's life on the line. What we know now from families who received a letter is that Bryan Kohberger has accepted a plea deal.
With his life on the line. They love that. His life on the line. I mean, look at it. 4 families and everyone who loved these people. Like I said, life sentence of grief. They've already been sentenced life sentence of grief. Doesn't get better. So for the victim's family and everyone who loved the victim.
In part of this plea deal, the defendant will plead guilty to all counts listed in the indictment. So that is 4 counts of murder as well as a burglary count as well. He will serve 4 life sentences consecutively with no possibility of parole. And the defendant will waive all rights to appeal this conviction as well. It also sounds like they will be seeking some restitution for families. This is things like money for funeral expenses and, victims' compensation.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. His father came to the arraignment dressed like this, Bryan Kohberger, and his sister with these braids. And his mother, just so much shame, covering her head, all masked up. Odd. I mean, you get it if it's so cold, but he's wearing this hat, but no coat. Odd, right? I always found that odd. So here's the news story.
The next thing that's happening, Alex, is there will be a change of plea hearing, and that is this Wednesday, July 2nd. And so for some, this may be some finality and some closure. For others, you have to imagine, Alex, there are so many unanswered questions in this case, and I'm sure that there's fear that those questions will remain unanswered. But here we are after more than 2 years, the one and only.
Hopefully the DA will meet with the victims' families and answer those questions in the ways that they can. But there, like my friend says, there is no good reason for this. There's no logical reason for this. Whatever the motivation, it's just, I mean, what I've come to the conclusion in the media that I've read is he wanted to be a notorious murderer. And it was clear that he was studying criminality and psychopaths and trying to understand himself. His graduate program.
The suspect in the Idaho College murders case, the man who stood accused of murdering Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Ethan Chapin. His name is Bryan Kohberger, and he has accepted a plea deal.
Well, and listen, Kana, of all the trials it feels like we've been keeping track of over the last...
Well, so some people, pro-burgers, think he was railroaded, Honeybee says. I'd like to know the psychology behind people that support people that do these heinous crimes. So you want to know the psychology behind people who support murderers? Don't understand it. Well, some are dark personalities, have personality disorders themselves, or have a criminal past and just want to see a criminal get over on the system. Some just have a conspiracy mindset, and our whole media and everything that they've been taught, and for good reason, to distrust the police. We have a war on the police going on right now with our media. And even within the police, in Chicago, they have to be trained by the Innocence Project. Everyone in Illinois, it's not even just Chicago, all of Illinois. So they've been taught that don't trust the police. You can't trust these investigations. All of true crime media has been geared. I was just hearing about innocence fraudster Bob Ruff, who does the aptly named, they always use these words, innocence fraudsters, Truth and Justice. Does the Truth and Justice podcast, LOL, more like the Innocent Fraud podcast. He works with Bob Ruff works with the Texas Innocence Project to get an early release of this murderer, Ed Ates, out of prison. So once they got him off of prison, no exoneration, not because of new evidence, nothing. They say it's because the podcast landed attention on it, but really it was just, they got him a deal to get out a little bit earlier. And there is a new A&E documentary on Ed Ates. I don't know this case well. Excuse me. Hold on one second. So in this documentary, that Bob Ruff was working with, they got him to take a lie detector test, and he failed. Now, it always was presented that his first test, he passed, but I don't know if there's ever been any proof that he actually passed. And the second test, they lost. I don't know if there's ever been any proof of this past polygraph by Ed Ates. in Texas. So he failed, and now Bob Ruff's latest podcast is him moaning and whining about how he's going to sue the production company and how no one should watch it. Bob Ruff. No. Does anyone know who he is? He used to talk about, he did the horrific documentary, total nonsense, fantastical conspiracies theory nonsense on the West Memphis 3. And he also worked to get Heyman Lee's killer, Adnan Syed, off. So it's the money side. If you're taking this side in true crime, people have figured out that this is the money side to take. To take the killer side is the money side, because people will tune in endlessly to hear. You can go any direction. This kind of podcast, my podcast, I have to stick with the facts and the truth, which never change. We might learn a new fact, but I can't stray from this. Those podcasts and those live streams can go anywhere, off in any direction, anything that your mind can imagine. For example, let's just take Karen Reed, because we're just talking about Karen Reed. He was killed in the basement. No, he was killed in the garage. Oh, wait, the garage, there's no access to the home, to the garage. You have to go outside. You only one way through outside to get in the garage. Then oh no, wait, he's back in the basement again. Got to DNA test this, DNA test that. So it is, and it's, I think also people like to hear the story of the bad cops and the bad government more than the bad criminal. The psychopathic murderer who murdered essentially because he wanted to.
The last several weeks, this was the one that we anticipated was at least going to have some sort of resolution later on in the year at the earliest. But for our viewers that are just kind of catching up, can you walk us through what the past several months have been like with this case?
It's been tumultuous. There has been filing after filing and pushback from the defense.
So Ed Ates was accused in 1993 of killing Elnora Griffin, who was found stabbed to death in her home. So he's just failed a polygraph test, and Bob Ruff is big mad about it because it ruins his brand. Because it was his big success story that he got out early, really he took credit for it because he made a podcast about him and he happened to get out early after doing 20 years in prison.
Initially trying to delay the trial. They have maintained their client's innocence this entire time. They wanted to have the death penalty taken off the table. They tried many times unsuccessfully for that to happen. In the meantime, this has been under
Like I said before, I just find it very interesting that these murderers who murder with such ease killed 4 people. Bryan Kohberger, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Zaina Kernoodle, and Ethan Chapin on November 13th, 2022, that he kills with such ease, but that he's absolutely deathly afraid of accepting punishment of death, the death penalty, which is a very much easier, kinder, gentler fate than what he doled out to these 4 young people.
gag order. So people involved in this case have not been able to speak out about it, which is why so much of this case has been shrouded in secrecy. We thought that it was going to go to trial in Moscow, and then it got moved down to Boise, and then it got pushed back yet again.
It makes me so mad because those poor victims are lost and the parents are brainwashed. Not all the parents. The Moore families Terry Hobbs still believes that they got the right people, but John Mark Byers, who was the original first suspect, he had an appeal to authority. What is his name? The profiler who used to work for the FBI. Mindhunter, that guy. Help me out. Who am I thinking of? Sat down with him and convinced him based on totally inaccurate information. I mean, he says in his profile that the West Memphis Three weren't ever in trouble before when all of them were. And Damien Echols has 500 pages of scary mental health history of starting fires, hurting animals. I mean, that's wild. So yeah, they knew that it would be very helpful to their campaign if they got some of the parents on board, and they, I believe, made them promises. Terry Hobbs talks about that with his ex-wife, made promises to give them things for getting on board. So a lot of parents of the victims still think that they're guilty, and they pled guilty via an Alford plea, which allows you to maintain your innocence while taking a legally guilty plea. So they're essentially a legal rarity, twice convicted, triple child killers. So they're paroled child killers, and Damien Echols was treated much like Karen Reed when he first got out. And when I first started talking about that case, the amount of pushback I got, I mean, I think that is my most downvoted, my first video and my most downvoted video. I mean, I think 1 out of every 10 people who listened to it had something positive to say. It was insults, you're wrong. And since the more people start talking about the facts of that case, it's really snowballed. They're on this side. There's many more people talking about their guilt. But when I first started talking about it, it was just me, William Ramsey, and Ed Opperman, and a few others. Trench Reynolds. That's it. That's it that I can think of. I may have been forgetting someone, but there's a lot more people talking about their guilt now.
And so here we are now, about a month before this trial was supposed to start, and we have learned that instead of a trial, there will be a plea deal.
And Kenna, do we know that in this plea deal, was there anything that was taken off the table? Was the death penalty taken off the table?
The death penalty is taken off the table. So
She just said it. This guy's like asleep at the at the desk. Was there anything taken off the table? She said it like 3 times. Death penalty's off the table, dude. Wake up.
Exactly. In exchange for pleading guilty, the death penalty will be taken off the table. It's a pretty standard cut and dry plea deal. There weren't very many concessions, which you have to imagine there may have been families out there that wanted concessions like that.
Well, and the other thing is, because we just saw your interview.
Wait, what did she say?
Very many concessions, which you have to imagine there may have been families out there that wanted concessions like that.
Wait. Go back.
Table.
The death penalty is taken off the table. So exactly, in exchange for pleading guilty, the death penalty will be taken off the table. It's a pretty standard cut and dry plea deal. There weren't very many concessions, which you have to imagine there may have been families out there that wanted concessions like that.
Well, and the other thing is,
his confession is him pleading guilty. I would think that he's going to have to stand up and say, I did it. I don't know. Now I'm going back to your latex spouse. I don't know if you're still around. This is going on longer than I wanted, but I would think that he's going to have, I think that, I don't know if he will make a statement. We've seen other people who pled guilty make statements. I don't know if he's going to have to go through every detail of it, but he's saying he did it. Who knows what he's going to say? This is his big moment. He's wanting to be a notorious murderer. He did the crime, and got caught.
Is because
so he's going to have to, I would think. I mean, I don't know. I take this as a confession.
we just saw your interview earlier today.
I had my doubts about the investigation. There was a lot of speculation, but once I saw the Dateline episode, it did change my mind. Still, I gave the benefit of the doubt until trial. We don't have to be like jurors. We can have an opinion one way or the other. I thought what I saw when they got him, and I saw his behavior in that traffic stop, I thought he could do it. And I heard about the DNA with the knife sheath and that his car was circling the parking lot. I didn't think they got the wrong guy. I remember following it from the early. Yeah, you're still here. She means the families wanted the death penalty. Okay. Thank you guys. Now I'm slow. Now I'm falling asleep at the wheel. Okay. Thank you.
With the friends of some of these victims. I don't know if you've had a chance to speak with them since this news, but for our viewers, how are they hoping to remember their best friends?
It's so important after speaking with Emily a lot and Hunter.
So some of the evidence against him, Debbie, 23 trips to the scene before the murder. There were reports that he went back to the scene after the murder, too. Do you remember that? Don't forget they have ring camera of him coming and going from the scene. So this is what makes me... And what, wait 40 years for the death penalty? And right, Anna, and I was saying that these families that are upset may not be as familiar as we all are with the well-moneyed, machine that is the anti-death penalty movement in this country. I've been up against it with the Julius Jones case, and at the last minute, Kim Kardashian called Trump because she wanted to free him. She was trying to free Julius Jones, and this is another Innocence Project case where they also produced their own propaganda called The Last Defense. One half was on Julius Jones's case, the other was on Darlie Routier's. And they said, all we have to do is test this DNA on the bandana found in his home that was supposedly worn by the real killer. Guess what? Guess whose DNA came back? Julius Jones. Did the Innocence Project walk away? No, they just doubled down on innocence. Doing some really cruel things, like they filmed that documentary where the victim's family was in their where the crime happened. They just started filming without their permission. So cruel. And they put out a whole bunch of disinformation, lies about the case. I mean, it's so much money. And the media will just jump on board and repeat whatever they want. He could have been freed by them easily. The best case scenario in that case, after he's already made a hero, they could have maybe commuted his sentence to life. This spares them a trial, which is brutal to go through and really hard emotionally. And it spares them of the wrongful conviction movement reversing Bryan Kohberger's conviction, either reversing it totally and getting him free, or reversing his death penalty conviction and getting him life with parole. Getting him out. This guy could be walking the streets. This deal, at least, has life without the possibility of parole. It's a very happy event.
That were the first to arrive at that King Road home, that the world remember their friends for how they lived their lives and not for their last day, not for how they died. I had a chance to speak with Ethan Chapin's entire family as well, and their family motto is to live like Ethan. He was a beaming, bright ray of sunshine. All of these kids were really described in that manner, and that's what's the most important here, is that we remember these kids, we remember how they lived, and we don't lose sight of the families here. Maybe there's finality here, but they never get to wake up with their kids ever, ever again.
Wouldn't that be nice though if we heard that more often in these cases? Their life sentence of grief. Funny that no one ever said that about John O'Keefe and his family. All right, so that's what I have for today. I mean, yeah, that's what I think, Anna Shaw. Those cases are so looked at. I mean, so with fine-tooth comb. They sometimes get them off on technicalities. This is another reminder of the real usefulness of the death penalty in certain cases, is to convince people like this to plead guilty. And Jocelyn made a good point in the comment section that at least we're not going to have any kind of mistrial. And they were gearing up for a whole innocence fraud campaign for Bryan Kohberger. If you didn't see it coming, you weren't paying attention. People were gearing up, started making videos about the other suspects and blah, blah, blah. So this is very, very good news. So I wanted to share this happy moment with all of you guys. Very happy for the families, even if they're not I'm sorry they're not happy about it. But really, if you know this movement and you know the direction our country is going, I believe it's the best possible outcome. So, and I hope they get the answers that they want and need. All right. Have a great night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow at 6. Thanks for watching with me. I'm just going to end the stream cold right now because I have no song for this case. All right. Have a great night, everybody.